Welcome to the Sankofa Ancestor Shrine, where, every week, we invite spiritual Black folk to reconnect with our ancestors as we journey through the crossroads. Please consider donating through patreon.com/Sankofa Shrine. We give praise to the universe. We give praise to Mother Earth. We give praise to all of nature and its beings. We give praise to all of our spirit guides. We give praise to our ancestors. We give praise to all that came before us in this struggle. We give praise to our elders. We give praise to all those who have cared for us, protected us, guided us, and loved us. Ashe. For today's sacred movement session, I thought we would take it back and just do some freestyle sacred movement. Just hit my hand on the dang desk. Do some freestyle sacred movement and just feel our bodies. There's this song that I heard a few months ago when it came out, and it's kind of been off and on stuck in my head ever since. It's a song by Junglepussy named Arugala, and I just really love everything about it. If I was a rapper, that's the type of rap I would rap. I swear. This is the exact type of stuff I would do. It's just ethereal and wonderful on every level, and I thought it would be really fun to move to. I'm not totally sure if we will be able to have it up, if if it will go up without the video being told that it can't be up with that song. So if that's not the case, I may end up dubbing it over, but just know that that was the song that I was trying to get us to dance to. So without further ado, let's do our fire breaths, and we'll do 200 of them and clear our lungs, strengthen them, bring some oxygen into our mind and throughout our body, and get ourselves ready for this spiritual session.
Not at all, now you never claim me. Made Be sure to tell your friends you know me cause I'm famous. Congratulations, maybe I'm jaded. I could've sworn I seen you loving things you said you hated. Wasn't I the one to make you love the shit you hated? Introduced you to beet juice and artichoke. Acting funny in front me round your work folk. You don't miss me, you just know I want my back broke. Wig snatched, get my eggs cracked, I don't know. It's all fun till you notice we not equally yoked. I may be goofy, may be sexy, but I'm not a joke. Party hard, take me far away like Fifi D. Sometimes I give in to sadness, sometimes I go to sleep.
Hello, welcome to the Shrine. I'm Tatami, your host, and today we are going to be looking into the Dust to Onyx Guidebook, doing a little bibliomancy for today. And I had opened up to this page, to a page from Papa Blade. Papa Blade is, let me see if we can get some imagery showing here. I just love this deck so much. I love the book, especially if you haven't noticed. Papa Blade is about expertise, about focusing in on what you're good at and offering that unique gift, and working on that unique gift so that it can expand and do well for the world. She starts out up here. Oh, first we'll read the little words that we have at the top. We have the keywords are expertise, equality, cooperation, analysis, and specialization. The opposite for dormant is exploitation, strict, narcissism, tyranny, bigotry. So being so far into your own thing that no one else can do other things, as opposed to finding that thing that you are wonderful at and gifted at and honing in on that so that you can uplift the world around you and spread joy to the world around you. So we have also two quotes. The first is from Neil deGrasse Tyson, and he says, I have a personal philosophy in life. If somebody else can do something that I'm doing, they should do it. And what I want to do is find things that would represent a unique contribution to the world, the contribution that only I and my portfolio of talents can make happen. Those are my priorities in life. I think that's a really beautiful quote, and that it can be used even if you don't have something that's absolutely unique. Even if you are doing something that's normal that other people always do, but you're able to apply your own energy to it, you're able to apply the fact that you're an expert, that you're passionate, that you have all of these things to offer to that thing, then I absolutely think that, yeah, it's kind of all the same thing in that regard, because you can take things that people are doing already and elevate them just from your own passion and expertise on the subject. You know, there's so many things to learn in this world. The second quote is a George Washington Carver quote. It says, in these strenuous times, we are likely to become morbid and look constantly on the dark side of life, and spend entirely too much time considering and brooding over what we can't do, rather than what we can do. Let us rejoice at the many unexplored fields in which there is unlimited fame and fortune to the successful explorer. Wow, that quote feels like someone could have said it a few months ago or a couple decades ago, but we all know George Washington Carver ain't been here for a minute. It's true. It's true. You know, you can get really caught up in what you've been stuck in, what you are forced into, especially because we do live in this oppressive system. So it's very easy to, like you said, become morbid and never spend any time on the positive things. And it's very hard to find a balance because you're out here trying to fight for justice for your people, but it's very depressing. You have to run into all these obstacles. You have to run into people who want you to argue why you should be allowed to just have basic human rights. And seeing other people actively fight against it for their own benefit is very difficult. It can make you very morbid. It can make you morbid just trying to go to work every day and seeing the, injustices that occur there, even if you're trying to ignore everything else in the world. So he's very correct on that. But his optimism in noting all of the possibilities that really are in a lot of situations. I think sometimes even when we realize something doesn't have a lot of possibilities, we then apply that to like everything else in our lives. And we forget that in each and every pocket of our lives, each and every moment of our lives, there is an opportunity to there's an opportunity to learn, there's an opportunity to grow, there's an opportunity to expand into many other different fields or choose some other option or switch up what's happening in a way that maybe you haven't tried before or you haven't seen before, whether it's your kids, your work, your finances, your neighborhood, however it is, whatever it is that you're looking at. So yes, unlimited fame and fortune to the successful explorer. Keywords there, success, but I do think that he has a point about, branching out and reaching out and trying to look for all the different paths available, recognizing that each of these different situations usually is a crossroads. It's usually not just this one path that you have to do this. There are some things that you do get shoved into a corner, due to oppression and other situations beyond your control. But there is a lot in our control, isn't there? So that was a really interesting start, and especially during the dark side of life occurring throughout our planet right now, especially here in America, in our country, our government's like falling apart, and we've got this pandemic. People don't know, where the supplies are going to come from. They're unsure of the future. So many people are jobless. There's so much going on, right? And so it's like you can get sucked into these dark times. And I've been kind of fighting it myself lately, just trying to fight how helpless a lot of things seem. Like, your brain is counting down the days till the next time rent is due, and it can just start to really stress you out and suck you into the dark times. So trying to maintain that mindset, and that's helpful with the ancestors. If you're asking your ancestors to really help you uplift that mindset, help you remember those other ideas, that there are other plans, there are other options, that you can always keep moving and keep trying, that part can really help alleviate the stress that can be building up, handing it to them and asking, say, I can put my energy into stressing right now, or I can put my energy into focusing on the path right now, focusing on what I'm trying to build right now. And so, that in that way you can put your energy towards something that maybe won't save you immediately this time, but will come in handy at some point. So that said, let's get into the reading. I've got paper bags, I feel like, all over me. I feel like every time I move, I crunch a paper bag, but that's like not even... That's not what this looks like. It's not what it sounds like, okay? There's one poking out of this drawer a little bit, and then there's one at my feet. But I assure you, it's got a purpose. Papa Blade is the energy of cardinal, fire, and air. That's quite a duo, I would say. Fire and air is quite a duo. Warmed by fire, air fuels the hot air balloon that steadily rises to the sky. Oh, I love this because, that can be a very destructive energy. But then you think about it in the course of a hot air balloon, and it's a beautiful symbol of how it can be a builder, a creator, a creative energy, a very loving energy. It steadily rises to the sky and is gently steered in the wind, the air. Warm air is also the basis from which clouds form. Clouds protect us from the harmful solar radiation, regulate the Earth's temperature, and facilitate rain and snow. in this same way, Papa Blade controls the atmosphere of any situation and will bring the light, fluffy, cooling clouds of a summer day or a raging snowstorm, depending on his temperament. So isn't that amazing? When you think of fire and air, do you think of a snowstorm? Absolutely not. See, now you guys, if you do not have the Dust to Onyx book, she put so much effort into this. I am so serious. I don't know what you're doing. I don't know what no, I'm kidding. It's expensive to get the whole thing. That's why I read it here for you, right? That's why we collectively do this, and I can get little things to read to everybody. But I'm just saying, like, the snowstorm, you can create any combination of weather just from those clouds forming in the sky, just from that warmth with the water and the sky and the air all coming together and creating something. That's so interesting. Another characteristic that we all know of hot air is that it rises and expands the hotter it gets. Papa Blade puts thought into action to elevate himself and his community. Okay, so that's kind of what we were talking about just now, was this idea that, you know, you can have all of this energy that it's really bringing you down, or it's really it's starting to suck you into a dark place, a place of hopelessness, should I say, a hopeless place, a place of not knowing where you're going next. But when you're able to think clearly about some steps that you can take, like I said, sometimes the thoughts that come to our mind, it's not going to solve us tomorrow. We're going to wake up a millionaire. But some of these things do build up steadily. Some things will come in handy that you'll forget that you put in that work later on. And then all of a sudden, the fruits of your labor will spring forth. So finding a way to put into action instead of just sitting and wallowing, finding a way to get into the action and get into the thick of things and elevate yourself in some way, shape, or form, in whatever way you can, is the power that you have within you. If there is ever someone fit to run a larger institution, it is Papa Blade, due to his ability to effect change and bring innovation on a larger scale. This makes him an especially great fit for the sciences or government. His ability to organize, his keen intellect, and his efficient management style make him a strong leader. However, just like hot air that rises up in the atmosphere, his commitment to his rationale distances him from the emotional waters and physical sensation of earth. At worst, he can be violent and rash without any compassion or conviction. He may struggle to be in tune with his heart, nurture relationships, or express sensuality. He must be reminded to come down to earth and experience the richness life offers. This is a really big one, I think. This is kind of like when a good example of this, I would say, is like when you start down your path of healing or spirituality, and then you start getting kind of holier than thou towards family members, friends, whoever. And it starts to really distance you. You start to see yourself as like, oh, because I'm putting in all this work and I'm doing all this stuff. And you forget that, you know, it's not only about you having to just take these actions. No, I have to work all this time. There are times where you can take time to nurture your relationships. This is something I struggle with, just because I'm like, I could be sitting here like talking about this, or I could be out there like trying to make money, or trying to finish a project, or trying to raise awareness about this thing or that thing. And it can get frustrating when you see other people still being frivolous. But there is, benefit to having those still good times. It's not just about working yourself to the bone, action, elevate yourself, elevate, always elevating. I never take a break. I never take a shot. I never go to the dancing with my friends. I don't do all that stuff. I don't twerk. It's low level. I don't do this. You know what I mean? You start to separate yourself from all these things that aren't even really necessary, all in your efforts to gain, and you start to see other people as less than for not acting the way you are, and that is kind of a slippery slope that you don't really want to find yourself on, because it can get really easy to be judging people. It's a lot easier to judge people than it is to just do you and still let other people be them. So by doing so, By coming back down and seeing the richness the life has to offer, the earth has to offer, by getting out of your own head, and not just being, because it's a balance, right? It's not just all about the ancestors, all about the earth, all about you, all about this, all about that. It's about a balance between these things, and finding that balance where you're still enjoying your life, but living it spiritually, with wellness, with hope, with love. So we have, he said, by doing so, you can avoid the more harmful inclination to be strict, judgmental, domineering, and narrow minded in your perspective. I think that's like one of the bigger things that we can run into, really, especially because we're trying to hold ourselves to a standard, and then it feels like everybody else out here being sloppy. You know what I mean? But you have to remember that that's not your job. Your job is not to be running around judging everybody, blah blah blah. And in fact, going back to the Sacred Woman book we used to study for our Sacred Sister Circle, judging people is really not your job. Your job is one of acceptance, of love, of healing, of offering a healing energy when you're in the room. And so therefore you're changing people without even changing people. You can live your life by example. You can live your life the way you want to. You can have rules for yourself. But judging other people, the constant lectures, or being disgusted with people, totally cutting off everyone you've ever known because they still smoke weed or something. I don't know. I've seen a lot of it. And getting into that judgmental space of just lecture, 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 and like, you should be doing this, and then it can start to get on you. It's weighing on you. You're holding yourself to this psycho standard that is just, it's taking you away from the pleasures of life, and this, you still have a life to live on this planet. You still have a life to live on this earth that is human and is not spiritual. You have plenty of time to be an ancestor, trust. So, she says, Papa Blade's face is a combination of Neil deGrasse Tyson's features and George Washington Carver's eyes. Tyson has a stellium of Sun, Mercury, Venus, and North Node in Libra. Independence and leadership come naturally to him, so in his lifetime he has learned to cooperate with others and use his brilliant mind for the greater good. Libra is ruled by Venus, bringing a sympathetic and intuitive balance to the higher mind. His Mars in Gemini makes for a highly active mind that is constantly fluttering about from one idea to the next. This has served Tyson greatly in his field of astrophysics, where he's contributed to highly renowned discoveries and highly acclaimed publications. So this is very interesting, especially because after this book was written, I'm pretty sure it was a year or two after, Neil got Me Too'd, a black woman claims, and I believe her, even though no one else believed her. I believe her fully, her story. I don't see why a sister would make such a thing up, especially about Neil. So it's very interesting to think about him being somebody who is very independent, leadership driven, and he learns to work with others, but he also he really wants to be unique and set apart from others, and see himself as like a kind of a one of a kind that other people have to kind of put on this pedestal, in a way. Not a pedestal, but he's like separate in a sense. He really wants to do something unique and offer something all by himself. So I do think he in some ways it's reading as a little self-important, and like he at some points has had to struggle with this idea of putting himself up and degrading others. So it's a very interesting thing to read her synopsis on him as a person, knowing what we know now. She says George Washington Carver was born into slavery in the 1860s with no known birth date. Carver's affinity for nature and agriculture is the hallmark of Virgo, ruled by Mercury. Carver taught poor farmers alternative ways to grow crops, putting his analytical mind to practical use with the earth. If there is an ancestor that I think farming, agricultural, gardening, hoodoo people and root working people, conjure folks should be working with, okay? If you a root worker who has a garden or a farm or is trying to get your green thumb on, I would maybe include honorable ancestor Carver in that works, because he was a genius when it came to growing plants, using plants, transforming plants. Like, y'all, he did hundreds of things with the peanut butter, okay? So and that was just one of the many plants that he grew. Okay, so I think he's is really beautiful that she's talking about the earth, and his earth connections, which obviously he would have been taught not only by like whatever white people had taken them under his wing, but also by his community, by his family, and also his bloodline had him have a connection with the earth as well. That's why black folks have such a connection with it. The land here in America, people try and disconnect us a lot of the time, but the facts of the matter is we were out here growing a lot of these crops. We were out here traveling in some of these woods, trusting in some of these woods in ways no other race besides the indigenous people here were doing. So, we do have connection with certain plants, such as, tobacco, because of our deep rooted abilities with them and time spent generationally with those plants. So, it says Moon in Scorpio desires intensity and depth in relationship meets with a progressive and versatile Uranus in Gemini. This may suggest a possible non-hetero orientation or an unorthodox approach to relationships, as he never married or had children and left the royalties from his authorized biography to his young research assistant, Austin W. Curtis Jr., which has led historians to speculate that he was bisexual. I've also heard that he was he had other things perhaps done to him in his youth by the masters, the slave owners, the like sexual abuse or abuse towards his body that may have prevented him from having relationships. I've also read that before. So he's a very interesting example, therefore, right? Because he had to endure some sorts of abuse as a child. That would later he would transform into strength, which gives a whole new meaning, right? Even with if he was, let's say he was just gay or bisexual, even then he would have certain things that he would have to avoid because he may be abused, he may be seen as different or less than. Some of his work may not be taken as seriously, right? I've noticed that when you're certain, religions, certain orientations, even certain races, things that you say aren't given as much legitimacy off the bat, but then other people out here just blurting out whatever off the top of their head, and people believe them. But at any rate, it takes on a different meaning when you hear him talk about becoming morbid and looking at the dark side of life. Because people, whether it's you being abused as a child or you being, sorry, I had to let someone come in here and make some noise for a minute. But I think I was talking about whether, you were abused or you have been oppressed or you have had to hide fundamentally who you are so that people don't judge you and try and harm you. That you can get sucked into that harm. I mean that morbidity, that dark place or whatever. How do you call it? I keep saying dark side. Yeah, he called it the darker side of life. And so you can get sucked into that. But finding those elements of strength, right? Because George Washington Carver could have, if he was abused, he could have just fallen into his own mind and not really thought about anything else. If he was bisexual, he could have really struggled with who to trust and who to felt like he was an outcast, felt like he wasn't like other people that seemed more normal. If you and just the basic oppressions of being an enslaved man, I'm sure can bring down the best of them, just that alone. So finding those ways to build in and of himself, finding those ways to contribute in and of himself. And also, I think even if he wasn't hooking up with his research assistant, even if that was just purely a gift to somebody else, I think that also speaks a lot to his character, that he was thinking about somebody else who wanted to contribute, who wanted to build, who wanted to be able to give what they could in this world. So handing that off to another researcher who felt passionate about that as well is something I think we can all take inspiration from. His ability to really always be thinking about the future, always be thinking about what he was doing was, contributing to the world beyond him. And I think that's just inspirational. inspirational. It really shows, because that's what they say. Isn't C.S. Lewis said, humility is not thinking less of yourself, it's thinking of yourself less. And I think George Washington Carver is an excellent example of a pretty humble person, somebody who was consistently thinking of how he was impacting the world and how he could give more to the world, and trying to get sucked into that side of life, of that giving side of life, as opposed to one of more stagnation. Papa Blade teaches us to ride the clouds of our mind and intuition. He teaches us not to dwell too long over analyzing and creating confusion. It's fine to listen to both sides of an argument, but our actions should be fueled by objectivity. Work towards truth, justice, and clarity without being inflexible, since the winds of life can change without being inflexible, since the winds of life can change direction at any moment. So I think that's a really beautiful thing, because, okay, you can be fighting towards truth and justice, truth and justice, truth and justice, but then you realize, oh, I've learned new information, so maybe I need to be changing my course. Like, I thought I was fighting towards truth and justice, but now that I know more, I need to switch up what I'm doing and act accordingly. One way that I think about that is, I've never been like for the animals, or vegan for the animals, that type of thing. The times that I have cut back on meat and dairy and all of these other items has not been for the animals. It's been for the planet. It's been because I think the planet as a whole needs us to look at it, or the planet as a whole needs us to concentrate on it. And that no one animal is the most important. I think that we need to be, we need to try and save humanity, but I don't think we need to be trying to focus in on different random things, right? I don't know exactly the purpose of baby seals in Antarctica or whatever, in the Arctic, but they're not like a vital part of the ecosystem or whatever. And I think that we should all remember that, like, pandas aren't a vital part of the ecosystem as much as we love them. Sometimes we do pour in a lot of energy into things thinking that we're helping something, when really we're kind of just serving ourselves. Another example, not just the pandas, but I used to, I for a minute was thinking about going not investing in leathers and furs, because I was listening to all the arguments about, like, they skin them alive and blah blah blah. And so around that time I bought a jacket that you may have seen me in back in those days, or on my Facebook page. It is a very fluffy turquoise faux fur jacket. Okay, it is a faux fur jacket. If you know what I know now, you're kind of chuckling at the idea that I was trying to be an environmentalist who didn't really mind about the animals and was looking at the planet overall, and I bought a faux fur jacket. Because faux fur and faux leather, pleather, as they call it, is a fancy term for plastic. I bought a jacket with a bunch of plastic fibers on it that, as it sheds, is just going to be adding plastic to the world. And as opposed to getting a fur jacket, which is all natural, can last generations, and is in leather also can last generations, last a very long time, way longer than plastic leather ever could. And plastic leather, once it's broken, you can't use it, but it's still plastic and it's still there. Same with my faux fur jacket. But now that I know better, I'm not buying those things, right? I'm not buying random plastic things to save the animals, because the planet is being hurt in that process. And I know better now, as somebody who's trying to be an environmentalist, as somebody who's trying to work with Mother Earth. I understand more so my place in the world. I understand the death of creatures, the death using things, using plant lives, using that energy. I understand the energy that is on on a fur coat that I wouldn't have understood prior. And so as I continue to grow and learn, I continue to realize that, you can be working towards something right here, but you have to absolutely, as she says here, remain flexible, because and be willing to laugh at yourself, okay? Because I was mad at myself when I read, I don't know, I think it was a commercial that someone was doing when they were like, think about this. They were putting it on for vegan type of channels, and they were like, think about this. you could get a used fur coat, or you could buy a new coat made of plastic. Which one sounds like it's better for the environment? Which one? And I was like, oh my gosh, how did I not realize that I bought an entire coat made of plastic? But I don't totally regret it because it was a black owned shop. The sister needed a first sale, and I was willing to give it to her on her Etsy. I think her it was like Momo. I don't even remember the name of that shop. Oh my goodness. But she made a lot of things. She didn't just make these fun, bright faux fur coats. But at any rate, my point is to remain flexible. Remain flexible with the fact that you weren't perfect a few years ago, and remain flexible when you learn, and be willing to switch. Be willing to switch your paradigm, be willing to switch your actions, and be flexible about it. Be flexible and willing to like roll with the punches even as you work towards truth and justice, because you don't know everything, and we're all here to learn, and we will continue learning for all of the decades to come. All right, so let's see. We're almost done here. Goodness. Put knowledge into practice to manifest workable solutions. Put your knowledge into practice, right? It's not all in our head. It's just like we have these ideas. You have these wonderful ideas. You have so much to offer. Put it into action. Put it into action. Whether it's just, mending a certain relationship, starting a business, writing a book, taking up a hobby, what have you, connecting with somebody, I'm not sure, but you do have something that you have on your mind, and putting that knowledge into practice and manifesting those workable solutions, even if it's not all workable, even if you can't figure out how to get to the end game, figure out those first few steps. Because I've learned that once you start doing those first few steps, you start understanding those first few things, then you can start, like now I'm building that knowledge. I'm starting to get a foundation, and you start to take stronger steps. And then you realize, okay, so what's the next step? And you can do each of those little steps one at a time, even if the end result seems far, far away. I don't know what my kids are shouting about. Literally, I have no idea what they're shouting. Y'all, it is 7 in the morning. It is 7 in the morning. I'm not even that awake. Give me a second. They didn't say anything, but I was like, please stop shouting. They aren't saying anything anymore, so we'll just try and finish these last few sentences. Be a strong and tactical leader. Avoid self-absorbed will. Check your convictions and commitments, and cultivate the compassion to assert your wise counsel without cutting down others. Okay, let's read that last sentence again. Avoid self-absorbed will. Check your convictions and commitments, and cultivate the compassion to assert your wise counsel without cutting down others. Oh, I needed to hear that last sentence. Asserting your wise counsel without cutting down others. I that's something I think I've definitely been working on this last couple months for sure. Just trying to realize it's not always about coddling people in your arguments, because that's one thing I absolutely distaste or dislike. When people are just like, oh, did you say it? Did you say it nicely enough? Did you say please enough times? And I don't like that at all. I don't like you having to like prostrate yourself, but I do at the same time recognize that the way you speak to people about truth, justice, and other issues absolutely impacts how they feel about it. And that's why, I try to keep our sessions here as, informative and put together as much as I can, so that when Black people who are looking to reclaim African traditional religions come into this, they can, see that it can give them maybe a good impression of it. It can feel familiar because they are used to people just talking normally and not, carrying on about like this or that, but instead just focusing on our spirituality in a very familiar way. And I think that's part of normalizing it too, normalizing us talking with our ancestors, reclaiming African traditional religions. It's all going to take some time, but it's all those baby steps which you and me are taking right now, and this is the foundation being laid out for when we're ancestors and our descendants are practicing the same type of thing and feel a lot more comfortable doing so. So, on that note, we're going to end for today. Thank you so much for watching. I really honestly appreciate everybody who watches, who supports. Thank you everybody on the Patreon. Thank you everybody who leaves comments and upvotes. I absolutely appreciate it. Please like and subscribe and share, and I'll see you next time. May your ancestors and spirit guides be with you at every crossroads.